Do you want to know how to discipline a child with DMDD, disruptive mood dysregulation disorder? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and education, all through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about DMDD. In this video, we're going to talk about what DMDD is and what it is not. We're going to talk about some of those key characteristics, just in case you are new to this. It'll be a good reminder for you. But then we're going to talk about what to do when some of these characteristics present themselves in everyday life, strategies, skills that you can use to help your child diagnosed with DMDD. So this channel is the Teaching Self-Government channel. That means we look through the lens of self-government. And before we get into DMDD, I just want to make sure that we understand what self-government is. So the definition of self-government is being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation and possessing a knowledge of your own behaviors so that you can control them. Now that means that you can self-regulate. We are doing a video right now for people who struggle with mood dysregulation. They don't feel like sometimes that they can regulate themselves, and they run into a lot of problems because of that. People with DMDD often look like they have bipolar. Let's not confuse the two, however, because bipolar disorder does have times of extreme mania and then times of oftentimes depression, like the downs and then the ups. And that's different because DMDD doesn't usually have those mania times. It just has the times with the anger outbursts, with the moods that seem so extreme, but it's not necessarily extreme happiness and mania. It's just the extreme anger most of the time. DMDD is not the same as ODD or ADHD, although oftentimes people with ADHD often also get diagnosed with DMDD as well, which basically just means that the person has a hard time focusing, or sometimes they even hyper-focus, but then they also struggle with their mood regulation, because that's where the DMDD comes in. Now, ODD is different than DMDD because ODD is targeted at a person. This is when you're saying that authority figure is what I have a problem with. ODD people, usually anyone who's in authority, that's where the struggle comes in. They want to have the say, they want to choose for themselves, just a lot of strong will that they're asserting at that time. But DMDD, it's different. They actually feel a mood shift. And those moods, that anger that comes in seems to take over. So there's a chemical reaction that happens in the brain, which is different than a choice for defiance, even though sometimes some of the behaviors could actually look very similar. When a person has DMDD, then you might see a lot of things like screaming, threats, severe anger. They might even be quick outbursts where it's like, ah, and then not. And then suddenly they're totally fine. This is the thing that oftentimes sets apart that DMDD from other things, is it seems like a switch. Like I turned it on, I turned it off. Where did it go? Now, of course, sometimes it can go for longer periods of time, but the whole idea with DMDD is that the person felt some emotional thing, this chemical that probably like just downloaded really fast, and they don't actually know why. Maybe they got overexcited about something, or they got offended about something, but suddenly it comes out in this really aggressive emotional pattern. Oftentimes when people are trying to help their children or themselves when they have DMDD, they will turn to CBT. And if you don't know what CBT is, I have a whole video on this channel about CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So CBT is very effective for helping a person who has DMDD. So CBT is when you learn how your feelings, your thoughts, and your emotions work together. You challenge those thoughts that you have, and you create new thought plans for yourself, and then you follow through. So what would this look like for a person who has DMDD? Well, let's say that the person suddenly feels a pulse of anger or anxiety or frustration coming on really fast, and they could say to themselves, what is that? They could ask themselves a question in their heads. What is that? Oh, that's frustration. So now they've identified it and they say, I know how to handle frustration. I have a skill for that. What skill do I need? Now, this is what I would train them to do if they were learning the self-government skills that I teach on this channel and on my website and in my books. If someone doesn't have the skills, then hopefully someone like a parent or a therapist or somebody has taught them a skill that they can use. If they start thinking a thought like, I'm so mad, then they might say, wait, challenge that thought. Do you have to be mad right now? Or is there some other skill you have, some other way to handle that circumstance? And then they're going to go to what they've already pre-planned to do. So this is why pre-teaching and pre-planning is vital. Now, the whole idea of self-government hinges on the idea that you prepare ahead of time for what you want to accomplish. So you pre-plan. You pre-plan for certain scenarios. You pre-plan the skills that you want to have. All of those things are pre-planned, and then when the moment arises, you are actually prepared for success. If you've already subscribed to this channel by now, then you know that I really focus heavily on pre-teaching so that a person can be self-governed, and you need to pre-teach yourself as well as other people. So that's going to be a big thing with DMDD, and you'll want to start there. Pre-teach the person about how their brain works, how their chemicals work. I have a whole training about that on my Teaching Self-Government website. It's called The Value and Mastery of Emotions. Could be very beneficial to go through some of the information in there with your child. I also have a video training of me teaching a family. The family all has neurodiversities and has some emotions and stuff that they're dealing with, some pretty strong emotions. And that family learned in that video training, you can see how I teach them how their brains work, how their thought patterns work, and how to make plans for the future. And then you see them be successful. And some of the youth had ADHD, some ODD, some DMDD, and some combinations. So it was really powerful. It's called the Teaching Self-Government Practical Parenting Skills for Self-Government. And so that's a video training that you can watch. Probably be really beneficial. So let's talk about some of the things you might see in that training and some helps that I have for you today, since we can't do a full training. So we've talked about skills that you might need to teach your child for success. There are 4 basic skills of self-government that I teach on my channel as well as in all of my trainings, because they are kind of at the core of everything. If a person is self-governed, they can follow instructions, accept no answers and criticism, accept consequences, and disagree appropriately. Each one of those 4 basic skills has a skill set attached to it, and that helps them see what piece they need to focus on next. So maybe to accept no answers, you look at the person or the situation, you keep a calm face, voice, and body, you say okay or ask to disagree appropriately, and then you drop the subject. If they feel like they're getting all tense, then they know they need to work on having a calm body. If they feel like after an interaction is done, they keep thinking about it, or whining and complaining or sulking, then you know that they have a problem with not dropping the subject, and they need to learn how to do that type of thing. So you teach them the 4 skills, you teach them the 5 teaching styles that you're going to use to correct them and help them with things go wrong, and then you consistently follow through, but you have to do so with calmness. If you power struggle with a person with DMDD, it just makes the behavior or episode get worse. So you have to have a plan for how are we going to do the corrections, and when they're completely dysregulated, what are we going to do? So I do believe in having calm plans for everyone. That doesn't mean that the calm plans need to be completely unique for every individual, however. So you can have, when they're little, something called a calm down spot. This is a trigger spot where they learn to be calm. This is different than a timeout, so don't confuse the two with each other. This is the place where they recognize it's time to do their self-regulation skills. And these are things that I teach in my training. When you have a small child, you're going to use that calm down spot. You're going to help them through the thought processes, maybe take some deep breaths with them, but those will be all parts of the plan of getting calm. As they get a little bit older, then you'll use something called the rule of 3. When they're younger but older, so meaning that they're older than a toddler, but they're still kind of young, you'll probably modify that rule of 3. But once they hit about about ages 7 or 8 and older, they can usually do the entire rule of 3, which can earn 3 negative consequences. Those negative consequences are really quite large. Now, why would we use consequences when somebody is just having a moment of dysregulation? Well, because when someone is dysregulated, they're in the wrong part of their brain. They're like mid or back brain, maybe even going back by the second. We need to try to help them engage the front brain to pull themselves out of it. The whole point of the rule of 3 and the calm down spot as a trigger spot are to disengage that back brain and to engage the prefrontal cortex so that they can start thinking again. If there's a certain script or a dialogue that's the same every single time that you're going to follow through with, and the same 3 negative consequences every single time, then they will know that they have a certain amount of time to choose that regulation. They'll also know the steps that they need to do to choose that regulation, which are the steps to following an instruction. Of those 4 basic skills that we teach on this channel, the main one is following instructions. If a person can follow instructions, they can be taught. They are at their baseline. And so they have to get themselves back to a place where they can give them self-instruction, or you could give them an instruction and they can follow through. There's 5 steps to following an instruction. They need to be able to look at the person or the situation, keep a calm face, voice, and body, say okay or ask to disagree appropriately, do the task immediately, and then check back. If they can't do that, they are dysregulated and they are out of control. So that's your gauge right there. So if they know we're going to start the rule of 3, we're going to give you a series of instructions. We're going to remind you the steps to following an instruction. We're going to give you pre-teaches about the consequences that are going to be coming. So we're going to give you all this front brain activity to remind you. Plus, you've learned it ahead of time, so you already know it. So if they're screaming, they still know it. So you're going to want to describe instead of react. That's going to be important. That's going to keep you self-governed, and it's going to also engage more prefrontal cortex work for them and for you, which is going to be really powerful. Then you'll start into that rule of 3 if they're completely dysregulated already. And hopefully, as you go through that process, they will choose. They will say, okay, wait, I'm doing it again. I need to choose to get calm. Now, it is possible with some children with DMDD that a slight calm down spot before going into the rule of 3 could be very beneficial. If your child with DMDD could actually calm down if they had like 5 minutes or less to get calm, then that right there is self-government, if they know how to get themselves calm. So if you see that they're going completely out of control, you could say, it seems to me that you might be going completely out of instructional control. So I'm going to have you go to your calm down spot for 5 minutes. And then in 5 minutes, when my alarm goes off on my phone or on my watch, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and start the rule of 3. And if you follow those instructions, you won't earn any of the negative consequences. But I just wanted to let you know that that's what will happen then. And then if you don't follow the instruction, then you will earn the negative consequences. So go to your calm down spot, and then hopefully you've gone through the thought processes that they need to go through when they're in the calm down spot, the type of breathing and counting with their breathing that they need to do to engage that prefrontal cortex, because that's our focus area, especially for a person who gets dysregulated easily, like someone with DMDD. So then you just follow through. You follow through with the plan. You stick to the same plan every single time. Soon, over time, they get better and better and better at conquering that dysregulation. And there comes a point when they're liberated from it. That doesn't mean that they still don't have a DMDD tendency, but if they can analyze what's going on and rein it in, they could actually get to a point where they don't emotionally react like that anymore, and they don't have those huge moods that they have to fall into. Now when they feel them coming, they know what to do. And so that's what this whole thing is all about. If you're dealing with a child or family member who has DMDD, I know that can be really difficult, and I would love to give you more help for that. So I have an entire training. It's called the TSG Parenting Course. It's on my website, teachingselfgovernment.com. And if you go to that, that's going to be very beneficial. Even on the website right now, there's a little Calm Parenting Toolkit that's like a little, I would say, a mini course to start you out on your self-government journey. That Calm Parenting Toolkit could also be helpful, which is at teachingselfgovernment.com. So go there, get the main course, get the mini course, get started for your calmness, and to help your loved one with DMDD know that there is hope with self-regulation.